There is a belief in leadership that we do not always say out loud, but many people quietly reward. We have rewarded intensity. We've made the mistake of making urgency a part of leadership. We have called emotional pressure passion. We have looked at a leader who is always moving, always reacting, pushing, always available, always on, and have called that person effective. But what if that's not effectiveness? What if that is dysregulation with a title? What if the emotional state of the leader is not just a personal issue? What if it's a business decision? The way a leader walks into the room, responds to pressure, handles disagreements, reacts to delay, or process disappointment is costing the organization more than anybody can really measure. Because here is the truth. Your emotional state will either become a stabilizer in the room or a silent expense line in business. And today, we're going there. This episode is called The Regulation Revelation: Why Your Emotional State is Your Most Expensive Business Decision. And we're challenging the belief that has damaged many teams, exhausted many leaders, and quietly shaped many cultures. The belief that intensity equals effectiveness. Let me say this clearly from the beginning. Intensity may get attention, but regulation builds trust. A dysregulated leader can still get results. They can still move a project forward. A high pressure leader can hit high numbers. But the question is this: what did it cost the people? The cost to the culture, to trust, and decision making. What did it cost the future of your organization and your team? Welcome back to Authentic Encounters. Lena Speaks. I'm Lena Morris, founder and CEO of Authentic Encounters, where we help leaders, teams, and organizations move from surface level training to real transformation. And today's conversation is one I believe every executive manager, founder, supervisor, pastor, team lead needs to sit with, because leadership is not just about what you say. Leadership is what people experience when they are in your presence. Your emotional state is part of that experience. And today we're going to talk about three things: what dysregulation actually costs in organizational dollars, the three regulation patterns that show up in leadership and teams, and how to begin resetting your emotional leadership before your reaction becomes your culture. And stay with me until the end, because I am excited to share how you can continue this work with me this summer inside the Authentic Encounters Summer Reset Rooms. Let's start here. Dysregulation is not someone having a moment. It's not a leader being frustrated or just someone raising their voice, shutting down, over-explaining, over-controlling, or reacting too quickly. Dysregulation is what happens when the nervous system takes over the leadership system. And when that happens, leaders stop leading from clarity. They start leading from threat, from fear, from pressure, from control. They start leading from self-protection. And eventually, the team learns to organize itself around a leader's emotional state. When a team has to manage the leader's emotions, the leader is no longer just leading the work. They have become the work. And then on the flip side of that, the leader is frustrated because nobody brought it sooner. But the deeper question is, have you created a culture where truth can arrive early? If truth only shows up when it is urgent, your culture may not be safe enough for truth to come early. Let's take a moment to have a leadership reflection. So ask yourself, do people bring me problems early? Do they tell me the truth without over-explaining? Do they challenge me and my thinking respectfully? Are they asking clarifying questions freely? Do they recover quickly when they have hard conversations with me? Do they leave interactions with me clearer or more anxious? Do I create urgency or clarity? Does my pressure create alignment? See, these questions all matter because regulation is strategic, operational, cultural, financial. Regulation is not the absence of strength, it's the strength under leadership. Now, let's talk about the 3 regulation patterns I often see in leaders and teams. They are not labels to shame anyone, okay? These are simple mirrors because all of us can move in and out of these patterns depending on pressure, season, fatigue, grief, growth, or responsibility. The goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. Because what you cannot name, you will keep normalizing. And what you do not name in your leadership, your culture will eventually absorb. I've said it multiple times. Let's look at the first pattern. It is the reactive regulator. This is where a leader who responds quickly, strongly, and emotionally, they may be very high in competency and they may care deeply, be brilliant under pressure. But when stress arises, their response becomes sharp. Their tone changes, their pace increases, their patience decreases, and their language becomes more absolute. They may say things like, "We don't have time for this." Like, "I already told you that. Why is this still not done? I need people to just figure it out. This should not be this hard." Now, listen, that's my favorite one. I admit to that one. And here is the thing. The reactive regulator often does not see themselves as reactive. They see themselves as driven, efficient. They also see themselves as someone who cares about excellence. And sometimes that is true. Absolutely. 2 things can be true at one time. But care without regulation can cause damage. Good intentions do not cancel out the impact of unregulated responses. And this is how it impacts your team. They become more cautious. They start withholding information. They may only bring polished updates. And they avoid saying things like, "Hey, I just don't know." They may even delay asking for help. And then publicly, they may agree, but privately, they are questioning what to do next. Over time, the teams learn how to calculate the risk. And then what happens? Trust starts to thin out. The reactive regulator does not need to stop caring. They need to learn how to pause before impact. They need to learn how to separate urgency from emotional force. And these are some questions they can ask. Hey, I can be asking these myself. I already copped to it. Am I responding to the situation or reacting to stress? Am I trying to create clarity or release pressure? Will my response make the next conversation easier or harder? Am I using my authority to stabilize or intensify the room? A regulated leader can still be direct, can still be decisive, they can still be firm, but they do not need emotional force to prove their leadership presence. Authority does not need volume to be clear. The second pattern is suppressed regulator. This leader does not explode. They contain. They hold it all in. They stay composed on the outside, but on the inside, the pressure is building. They may look calm, but they are not always clear. They may avoid difficult conversations. They may say, "It's fine," when it's really not fine. They keep giving grace, but never create accountability. They may overfunction because they do not want to confront the issue. They carry frustration quietly until it turns into distance, resentment, or a sudden emotional release. This is the leader who says things like, "I don't want to make it a big deal. I'm just going to handle it myself. It's easier if I do it. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I'm trying to be patient." And again, those all could be good intentions, but suppressed emotions does not disappear. It leaks. Unspoken frustration does not stay silent. It becomes tone, distance, delay, and resentment. The team may not know where you really stand. Expectations feel unclear. Accountability feels inconsistent. Problems go unnamed until they become too large. And the leader may appear kind, but the culture becomes confused. And when leaders suppress instead of clarify, they often create emotional debt. Eventually, that debt becomes due. It comes out in a meeting, performance review, out of a sudden decision that no one was expecting. It comes out as withdrawal and burnout. So the suppressed regulator does not need to become harsh. That's not what we're saying. They need to become more honest and earlier. They need to build a practice of clean, timely communication to understand that clarity is not cruelty. And they can say things like, here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I need. Here is the impact. This is the expectation moving forward. Here is how I want to support you. Many leaders think they are protecting the relationship by avoiding the conversation, but often they are protecting their own discomfort. Listen, avoiding the conversation may keep the peace in the moment, but it often sacrifices trust in the long term. And the third pattern is the grounded regulator. This is the leader who has emotional awareness and leadership discipline. They still feel pressure. They experience the frustration just like the others, and they still have hard days. They have moments where they need to collect themselves and gather themselves and get it together, but they do not hand their emotional state to the room and make everyone else carry it. They know how to pause, name what's happening, ask for better questions, and they know how to separate the person from the problem and how to bring clarity without emotional contamination. So the grounded regulator may say things like this: let's slow down so we can make a clearer decision. I'm frustrated by the situation, but I want us to solve it well. Help me understand what happened. They might also say something like, what do we know? What do we need? And what is the right next step? They will say things like, I want to be direct without being dismissive. This needs to be addressed, and we can address it with respect. See, the team feels steadier. People bring information sooner. Feedback becomes easier to give and receive, and conflict becomes less threatening. Decisions move faster because people are not emotionally guessing, and the leader becomes a stabilizing force. The most trusted leaders are not emotionless. They are emotionally responsible. So grounded regulation is not a personality trait. It is a practice. It requires self-awareness, number one skill a leader should have, emotional discipline, nervous system awareness. Do you know your triggers? Clear communication, consistent expectation, recovery after rupture, accountability without attack, what it means to reflect before reaction. Grounded leaders ask themselves, what am I feeling right now? What is mine to manage before I speak? What does the room need from me right now? And what is the difference between pressure and priority? They also ask things like, how can I be clear without creating unnecessary fear? A grounded leader does not lower the standard. They lower the unnecessary threat around the standard. So now the question becomes, how do we reset this? Because it's one thing to hear this and think, yes, I know a leader who needs to hear this. We can always find somebody else, right? But the deeper work is asking, where do I need this? Where have I confused intensity with effectiveness, pressure instead of clarity? Where have I avoided conversations and called it patience? I let stress become the team's atmosphere. These are questions you should be asking yourself. Where have you expected people to produce excellence while managing my emotional unpredictability? This is not about shame. It's about stewardship. Leadership is stewardship of influence. Your emotional state is part of what you are stewarding. The first reset is to name your pattern. Are you more likely to react or are you more likely to suppress? Are you more likely to withdraw or are you more likely to overfunction? Do you like to control or to avoid? Under stress, what version of you tends to show up? Because pressure reveals patterns. And the goal is not to judge the pattern. The goal is to interrupt it before it becomes culture. So I have a few questions for you. When I'm under pressure, do I get louder or quieter? Do I move toward people or away from them? Do I ask more questions or make more assumptions? Do I become clearer or more controlling? Do I create calm or urgency? Do people know how to approach me when something has gone wrong? Those questions matter because your team has probably already learned your pattern. The question is whether you have. Your team often knows your leadership pattern before you have language for it yourself. The second reset to build is the pause. The pause is not weakness. The pause is creating a leadership space. It gives your values time to catch up with your emotions. The pause creates room between you and what you feel and what you release. It can be as simple as, listen, let me take a few breaths before responding. Saying things like, let me think about that for a moment and get back with you. It could be asking clarifying questions before giving opinions, saying things like, I want to respond to this well. It means taking a break before a difficult conversation to put yourself in someone else's shoes, reading your email response before sending it out. Many leadership mistakes happen in the gap between being triggered and being thoughtful. The pause protects you from making your first reaction your final message. The pause is where emotional reaction becomes leadership response. And the third reset is to separate urgency from threat. Of course, some things are absolutely urgent. Deadlines absolutely matter, and customer issues, safety issues, financial decisions, and performance gaps. All of it matters, but urgency does not require panic, and it does not require that you emotionally flood your team members, and it doesn't require fear all the time. It does require clarity, ownership, and it requires the roles to be defined. Instead of saying things like, why is this not done? Try saying things like, what is blocking completion and what decisions do we need to make right now so we can move forward? Instead of saying, this is unacceptable, maybe, just maybe try saying, this cannot continue, so let's identify what needs to change immediately. Instead of saying things like, I should not have to keep asking about this. Because after all, you're talking to other adults. You should say things like, we need a stronger accountability rhythm so this does not keep falling through. Instead of saying, I need people to step up, which is so common to say, let's clarify ownership, expectations, and deadlines before we leave the room. Pressure tells people something's wrong. Clarity tells people what to do next. And then let's talk about repair. The fourth reset is repair quickly. Even regulated leaders have moments because we're human. It's our humanity. You will not always get it right, and nobody says you have to. And sometimes you will pop off and respond sharply. You will avoid stuff too long, misread situations, and unintentionally bring stress to the room, and you didn't mean to create it. But mature leadership is not pretending you never miss it. Mature leadership is knowing how to repair it. And there's a language people use when they do that. They say things like, I want to revisit how I handled that. My tone was sharper than I needed it to be. The issue still matters, but I could have addressed it better. You know what? I want us to solve this without creating unnecessary tension. Let me clarify my expectation. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize for the impact and how I've communicated it. Repair does not weaken your authority, it strengthens your trust. So remember this, repair is not the loss of authority, repair is the restoration of trust. And as we focus on the fifth reset, it is to create a shared language. Teens need language when pressure is present. They also need it for conflict, decision making, and they need it for accountability. And above all, they need it for emotional safety. Because if the only person who can name what is happening is the leader, the team is still dependent on the leader's awareness. Healthy teams can say, we are moving forward too fast to think clearly. We need to separate the problem from the person. They say things like, hey, we need to clarify who is the decision owner on this. We are reacting instead of responding. We need to pause and reset. They're saying all of these things, and everyone on your team should have the freedom, the tools, and the invitation to have those conversations and use that language. So this is how culture changes when you use it. It's not through slogans or one-time trainings or through inspirational posters. Culture changes when people have the language, permission, and rhythm to practice a different way of working. Cultures is not what you announce, is what your team is allowed to practice. I want you to pause for a moment and think about your leadership presence, not your title, your intentions, your performance review, your calendar. I want you to think about your presence. What happens to the room when you enter it under pressure? What happens to your team when you're frustrated? What happens to your communication when you're overwhelmed? To your honesty when people are unsure how to respond? What happens to accountability when your emotions are either too loud or too hidden? And maybe the most important question is this: are people giving you their best thinking, or are they giving you the safest answer? The safest answer is not always the truest answer. And this is why regulation matters, because leadership is not just about producing outcomes. It's about creating the conditions where the right outcomes can be produced with trust, clarity, and courage. Here's a simple self-check you could use this week. After your meetings, ask yourself, did I create clarity or confusion? Did I create movement or anxiety? Did I invite truth or did I punish it? Did I respond with values or react from pressure? Did I leave people with direction or emotional residue? That phrase matters the most, emotional residue, because sometimes a leader leaves the room, but their emotional state stays behind. The meeting ends, but people are still recovering. They're still replaying it in their mind. A decision is made, but trust is bruised, and the process is now fractured. And I want leaders to understand this. The emotional residue of leadership can far outlast that meeting. So let's bring this together. Dysregulation costs more than more organizations realize. Turnover, silence, delayed truth, avoidance, on and on. We've talked about so many of these. The goal is not to become a leader who never fails. That's completely unrealistic and not even healthy to think that you could do. The goal is to become a leader who does not make everyone else responsible for the things that they have not processed. Regulated leadership is not emotionalist leadership. It is responsible leadership. You can still be passionate, bold, decisive, hold high standards. You can still address what needs to be addressed, but you can do it without making fear the fuel, without using pressure as your primary tool, and without making your team emotionally brace for your leadership. Because the best leaders do not just move the work forward. They make the room healthier while the work is moving forward. And that is exactly why I created the Authentic Encounters Summer Reset Rooms. Because sometimes leaders do not need more information. They need a room to reset, a room to reflect, to be challenged, a room to practice new language, a room to strengthen how they lead, communicate, decide, and relate. This summer, we are hosting 2 live virtual reset rooms on Zoom. The first is the Leadership Reset Room, and it is designed for leaders, managers, business owners, supervisors, and culture carriers, we like to say, who want to lead with more clarity, courage, emotional discipline, and alignment. We will meet live virtually on Zoom over the lunch hour. And the Leadership Reset Room meets Tuesdays from 12:05 to 12:55 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is for the leader who is saying, listen, I need the reset room now. I need to learn how to reset. I need to stop carrying everything. I need better language for hard conversations, more clarity in my decision making. I need to lead without burning out. And I need to stop reacting and start responding. Then we have the Relation Reset Room, and it is designed for people who want healthier communication, stronger emotional awareness, and better relational rhythms in their personal lives. Different from the workplace. We will also meet live virtually on Zoom, and the Relation Reset Room meets on Thursday evenings from 7:30 to 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time. This is for the person who is saying, I want to communicate better. I want to stop avoiding hard conversations. I want to understand my patterns. I want to build healthier relationships. I want to reset how I show up with the people closest to me. My friends, my family, my community. You can join one session. You can join for the full summer series. It is totally flexible. Or you can just choose one room and pick the one that fits best for you in this season of your life. But do not just listen to this episode and say, that was good. Do something with it. Because insight without practice does not create transformation. A reset does not happen because you heard the truth. A reset happens because you practice a new response. So I want to invite you to register for one of the summer reset rooms. Choose the Leadership Reset Room or the Relationship Reset Room. You can find that information in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to me at AuthenticEncountersLLC.com and we can help get you registered, okay? Bring your leadership challenges, bring your relationship patterns, just bring them all to the room and let's do the reset work together. Before we close, I want to leave you with this. Your emotional state is not separate from your leadership. It is shaping your leadership and it's also shaping your team and the ultimate culture where you do some of your best work. It also shapes the way you speak, decide, create, challenge, and trust. So the question is not, do emotions belong in leadership? The question is, are my emotions being led well enough to lead others well? Before you leave the room, you have to lead what you bring into the room. This has been Authentic Encounters, Lena Speaks. I'm Lena Morris. Thank you for listening. Share this episode with a leader who is ready to move from intensity to clarity. Again, do me a favor, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And don't forget to register for the summer reset rooms. Your next level of leadership may not require more pressure. It may require a reset.